Hello there, my name is Julius. Welcome to today's session, a brief one. We are looking at how to write reports. We are at the planning stage. In our last session, we looked at planning. Let me share. We looked at planning. We looked at what entails planning. This was the introduction of the session where we looked at planning. We needed to define the purpose and the scope of the report, consider the audience, gather information for the report, design the structure of the report. So we looked and did practice on defining the scope, purpose and scope of the report. Today, we are going to look at the consideration of the audience. So who is an audience? An audience in the context of a report is the person who reads the report. Okay, so an important aspect of report writing is to consider the audience, your audience. So unlike letters and memos, reports and proposals have a far wider distribution. So memos normally are within the organization. Letters is specific for an individual, 2 or 3, or one party, but reports can be read by anyone. If I go to the archives and Google, I'll see reports of different organizations, depending on what context of the report. Yeah. So readers of your report may be involved in problem solving or decision making process. So your job as a writer is to make the readers to understand the information and data presented. So they need to understand it consistently such that we don't have misinterpretation of what you have written, because you want to communicate a certain thing, a certain concept, a certain idea to share specific information. Therefore, they have to read, understand whatever you have written in form of a report in a consistent way without bringing contradictions. So in order to make your reading to be easier, then you need to consider the reader. That's the bottom line of this. So always you should ask yourself, who is my target audience? Yeah. So I'm guiding you on an analysis of how to analyze your target audience. So we have questions again that we need to respond to help us answer that. So to analyze the needs of the target audience, respond to the questions in the table below. Now, this follows the case study that we did in the previous session. In the previous session, we were looking at the scope, the purpose and scope, and we answered questions that responded to the purpose and the scope. And the idea was that you think of a report you are writing, think of a report that you're about to write, and then you answer the questions. So we are carrying that from that particular session to this one, and we are saying that we want to analyze the needs of our target audience. So who is your audience? There are basically 3 types of audience. So the first one is a primary audience. People who must act or make decisions based on the document. For example, your donor, the donor that you are writing to, if you it's a proposal, then they need to make a decision. That's a primary audience. If, for example, it's a field report, you are writing to justify this field visit, then your primary audience is maybe your boss or the relevant party within the department. The secondary audience are people who will be affected by actions the primary audience is going to take in response to the document. For example, if you are writing a document to the donor, if the donor decides to fund the project, then we have people who will benefit from this project. They are called secondary audience. They are called secondary audience. They are affected by actions by the primary audience. If the donor doesn't fund, then they'll still be affected, because if, for example, it's food, they will still suffer from famine or whatever. So there are people affected, but they are not the primary audience because they don't make decisions based on the document that has been shared. Then we have intermediary audience. Intermediary audience are people responsible for evaluating the document and passing it to the right people. So, like your manager is an intermediary audience. The manager who goes through the document, they look at whether it's making sense, whether it is carrying the day. It has the objective. The national manager, the national leader of the organization, is an intermediary audience. You will just pass it over to the donor, but they have really understood the document and they have evaluated it and seen that it carries the weight that is deserved to be passed over to the donor. So here the questions again have been put in type of a framework. In this is the basis of our exercise today. So we have what are, like when you are referring now to the report that you are writing or the report that you're about to write, what are the needs of each audience type relevant to the report? Like the primary audience, secondary audience, and intermediate audience. So you'll capture that. Then we need to answer the following questions so that we address our primary audience. Know that the primary audience is the reason why we are writing the report. The secondary audience is, by the way, the intermediary audience is the one that evaluates the document and sees the worthiness of the document it carries to the next level. So these are the questions that needs to be responded to. What do they expect to learn from the report? What do they already know? What don't they know that must be included in the report? Do they hold certain biases or preferences that will impact on the interpretation of the report and hence decision making or problem solving? For example, if your primary audience is a donor and they have some perceptions about something, then do they have that? What positions do they hold in the organization? Are they third parties? Are they just external funders and all that? What are their level of education, work experience relevant to the report? This determines whether the language that someone uses in a report. What decision making power do they have relevant to the report and anything else? So this is the basis of our question today, the assignment that will come after this session. So how must you adapt the report for the audience? How do you adapting is to acclimatize the report for the audience. So based on the above analysis, the fillings that are done over here, what what must you consider and or adapt in your report to cater for the, so the needs that will have been found here will inform how you are writing your report. So we have some things that you may consider in adapting the use of jargon and technical terms. Jargon is a specified language, like you'll find that each organization has its own jargon. So do your audiences have that knowledge of that jargon? If the audience doesn't have, then that's a problem. You need to adjust that. Level of language used in the report, scope of the report, focus of the report, the level of detail in the report, strategies to handle possible contentious or sensitive issues given the target audience. Now that you have a handle on the audience, the next step is to gather relevant information capable of addressing the purpose, scope, and issues that the report must address. Thank you. That is the bit of the session today. Now we jump into looking at the assignment today. I'll just quickly open the assignment. As previously highlighted, the assignment is basically on the filling of this grid. In this assignment, you'll analyze the needs of the target audience by responding to the questions in the table below. Following on from the previous case study of the report you're about to write or you are writing. So you'll remember the report that you're about to write or you are writing, then you highlight the primary, secondary, and intermediate audience and respond to the questions. This is what you'll find in your assignment after this session. Thank you very much for listening to me. Feel free to contact me either on WhatsApp, on email, or even you can upload your audio on the system and we continue engaging for the betterment of our learning. Thank you very much. Have lovely moments.